My sister announced her pregnancy like a holiday tradition right between the mashed potatoes and the pecan pie. She told the table she was having triplets, then slid a set of keys into my palm and said I was buying her a bigger house. My mother cheered while my father nodded like my bank account was community property. I just smiled, because I had already moved the real pieces into place, and the triplets were not the only thing about to fall apart. My name is Olivia Long, and for the last decade, I have existed in my family's ecosystem not as a daughter, but as a human wallet with a pulse. I drove my rental sedan down the familiar cracked pavement of the suburbs just outside Greenville, South Carolina. The humidity even in late November clung to the windshield like a second skin. It was Thanksgiving, the holiday where resentments were traditionally plated alongside the turkey and covered in enough gravy to make them palatable. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. 35 years old, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that had learned to stop showing hurt about 5 years ago. I looked calm. I looked professional. I looked like the successful cybersecurity analyst my family bragged about to their church friends, but mocked to my face. I parked behind my father's truck, noting the new tires I had paid for 3 months ago. The house itself stood looming in beige, a two-story construct of vinyl siding and faux brick accents that I had purchased 2 years ago under the guise of a family investment. They called it the family hub. I called it the anchor that kept me drowning. I took a breath, the air tasting of wet leaves and wood smoke, and stepped out of the car. I was not here to eat. I was here to deliver a performance, and unlike my sister Marissa, I had brought receipts. Inside, the house smelled of sage stuffing and expensive candles. My mother, Elaine, was in the kitchen, directing the chaos with a wine glass in one hand. My father, Robert, sat in the recliner I had bought for his bad back, watching football as if the world outside the living room did not exist. Then there was Marissa, my younger sister, the golden child whose shine was entirely financed by my direct deposits. She was lounging on the sofa with her fiancé, Trent, a man whose ambition was limited to fantasy football leagues and spending money he did not earn. When I walked in, the greeting was warm but transactional. My mother hugged me and immediately asked if I had brought the wine she liked, the one that cost $40 a bottle. I handed it to her. Dad nodded at me, a silent acknowledgement that the utility bill had cleared. Marissa waved from the couch, her hand resting protectively over a stomach that looked perfectly flat. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the set I had paid to have restored last year. I took my seat. They had placed me next to Aunt Rowena, my father's sister. Rowena was the outlier in the family. She was a 60-year-old librarian who wore thick glasses and suffered no fools. She gave me a small, tight nod as I sat down. She knew. She was the only one who knew what was in the thick manila envelope resting inside my tote bag. Dinner began with the usual pleasantries. We passed the green bean casserole. We complimented the bird. My mother talked about the weather and the neighbors, filling the silence with noise so we would not have to talk about anything real. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. I was watching the clock. I knew Marissa had an announcement. She had that vibrating, frantic energy she always got when she wanted attention. It happened right between the mashed potatoes and the pecan pie. Marissa stood up. She tapped a spoon against her glass of sparkling cider. The sound sharp and piercing. The table went quiet. She smoothed her dress over her hips and beamed, a smile so bright it looked painful. "I have big news," Marissa said, her voice trembling with theatrical emotion. She looked at Trent, who grinned like he had just won the lottery. "We went to the doctor yesterday. It is not just one baby, and it is not twins." My mother gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "I am pregnant with triplets," Marissa announced. The room erupted. My mother shrieked and clapped, tears instantly springing to her eyes as if Marissa had just won a Nobel Prize. My father slammed his hand on the table, nodding vigorously, his face flushing with pride. "Triplets," Mom screamed. "3 blessings. Oh, Marissa. Honey, that is incredible." Marissa soaked it up, basking in the adoration. Then, her eyes locked onto mine, the warmth evaporated from her face, replaced by a cool, expectant calculation. "Obviously," Marissa said, her voice dropping to a serious, businesslike tone, "we cannot stay in this house. 3 babies plus us. We would be on top of each other. It is physically impossible." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a set of keys. They were the spare keys to this house, the ones I had given her for emergencies. She walked around the table, the heels of her boots clicking on the hardwood floor, and stopped behind my chair. She slid the keys into my palm. The metal was warm from her hand. "You are buying us a bigger house, Olivia," she said. It was not a question. It was a directive. "I need you to start looking this week." I made a list of requirements: 4 bedrooms minimum, a fenced yard for the kids to play in, and it has to be close to Mom so she can come help with the babies. I stared at the keys in my hand. The audacity was breathtaking. She did not ask if I could afford it. She did not ask if I wanted to do it. She simply announced it, as if my labor was a natural resource she was entitled to mine. Trent chimed in from across the table, leaning back in his chair with a smug satisfaction. "Yeah, Liv. We will send you some listings we like tonight. There is a great new development in Silver Creek. A little pricey, but for the triplets, it is worth it." He spoke as if I were a subscription service they had upgraded. Send listings, as if I were their real estate agent and their bank combined. My mother was still clapping, oblivious to the silence coming from my end of the table. "Oh, Olivia, imagine you can get them that lovely colonial on Elm Street, the one with the wraparound porch." My father nodded, taking a bite of turkey. "Good investment," he mumbled. "Family property." I closed my fingers around the keys. The metal bit into my skin. This was it. The moment I had rehearsed in the mirror for 2 weeks. The moment I had discussed with my therapist and my lawyer. I kept my face perfectly calm. I did not frown. I did not sigh. I let a small, polite smile touch my lips. "Congratulations," I said. My voice was steady, devoid of the tremor that usually accompanied my confrontations with them. Marissa's eyes lit up. She thought she had won. She thought I was rolling over, just like I had when I paid for her car repairs, her credit card debt, and her wedding dress for the wedding that never happened 3 years ago. "I am so happy you are excited," Marissa gushed, reaching for the keys to take them back. Assuming the transaction was complete, "We really need to move fast. I do not want to be moving when I'm huge with 3 babies." I pulled my hand back, keeping the keys. "I actually have some news too," I said. "I already found a place." The room paused. Trent raised an eyebrow. "Oh, that was fast. Is it the one in Silver Creek?" "No," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming sharp and clear enough to cut glass. "It is not for you. Marissa, it is for me. I am moving tomorrow." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence where you could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. My mother's hands stopped mid-clap. Marissa's smile faltered, the corners of her mouth twitching as she tried to process the sentence. "What?" Marissa laughed nervously. "What do you mean? For you? You live in Charlotte. You have that apartment." "I gave notice on my apartment," I said, "and I closed on a new townhouse yesterday. A beautiful place. Just for me. 1 bedroom, no guest room." "But," Marissa looked at Mom, then back at me. "But what about us? The triplets, you just said you found a place." "I did," I repeated. "For myself. But we need a house," Marissa's voice shrilled, rising in pitch. "Did you not hear me? Triplets? Olivia, we cannot live here." "I agree," I said. "You cannot." I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the thick manila envelope. It hit the table with a heavy thud that sounded like a gavel strike. I slid it across the white tablecloth until it rested in front of Aunt Rowena. "Rowena," I said, keeping my eyes on my mother. "Would you mind reading the document on top? I think my voice might shake if I try to read it myself. And I want everyone to hear it clearly." Rowena did not hesitate. She had been waiting for this. She picked up the envelope, opened the clasp with a deliberate slowness, and adjusted her glasses. She pulled out the document. It was a formal legal notice, typed on heavy bond paper with the letterhead of Naomi Vale, attorney at law. Marissa was staring at the paper, her face pale. Trent looked confused, a piece of turkey hovering halfway to his mouth. My father had stopped chewing. Rowena cleared her throat. She looked at the paper. Then she looked up at my mother, her eyes cold and hard. "It is a notice to vacate and notice of listing for sale," Rowena read out loud, her voice projecting to the back of the room. "Regarding the property located at 112 Oakwood Drive." My mother's hands, which had been frozen in the air, slowly lowered to the table. "For the sale," Mom whispered. "Whose sale?" Rowena continued reading, ignoring her. "To the current occupants, Robert and Elaine Long, Marissa Long, and Trent Sutherland. You are hereby notified that the owner of record, Olivia Long, has entered into a contract to sell the premises. You are required to vacate the property within 30 days, appearing no later than December 28th. The words hung in the air, toxic and undeniable. I watched Marissa's face crumble from entitlement into pure, unadulterated shock. I watched my father's jaw go slack. I watched Trent drop his fork. I sat back in my chair and took a sip of my water. The turkey was cold, but for the first time in my life, I did not mind. I had finally served something they could not swallow. To understand why the silence in that dining room felt so heavy, heavier than the oak table or the crystal chandelier I had paid for 3 Christmases ago. You have to understand the specific weather system of my childhood. In the Long household, the climate was entirely dictated by Marissa. If Marissa was happy, we were experiencing a heat wave of manic joy. If Marissa was sad, we were in a monsoon. If Marissa was angry, we were boarding up the windows for a hurricane. My role in this meteorological disaster was not to be a person. I was the barometer. I was the sandbag. I was the relief effort that arrived after the storm to rebuild the roads. My needs were not weather. They were just inconveniences. Like a light drizzle you ignore while planning a picnic. The indoctrination started early. I remember my 10th birthday, or rather, I remember the day that was technically the anniversary of my birth, but was functionally a celebration of Marissa's existence. Our birthdays were 4 days apart, a biological coincidence that my mother treated like a logistical burden she refused to carry. We always had a combined party. That year, the cake sat in the center of the picnic table, encased in pink frosting that smelled of artificial strawberry, in bright, looping icing. It read, "Happy birthday, Marissa." Just Marissa. When I pointed this out, quietly, hoping not to disturb the peace. My mother sighed the way one sighs at a flat tire. She told me the bakery had made a mistake, but surely I was big enough not to make a scene about it. I was the older sister. I was the mature one. She told me to smile because the neighbors were watching, so I smiled. I sang happy birthday to my sister, while staring at the candle wax melting onto the frosting, learning the first and most enduring lesson of my life. My joy was optional. Marissa's joy was mandatory. If I wanted to be loved, I had to be flexible. If I wanted to be seen, I had to be useful. This pattern calcified as we grew older. It hardened into a bone structure that supported our entire family dynamic. When I was 18, I came home holding a thick envelope from a university in Virginia. I had secured a full academic scholarship. It was the kind of achievement that usually warrants a toast or at least a hug. I walked into the kitchen, placing the letter on the counter next to my father's coffee mug. I told them I was going to college for free. My father looked at the letter. He nodded, a single, sharp dip of his chin. He said that was nice. That was the word he used. Nice, like I had folded the laundry correctly. Then, without missing a beat, he looked me in the eye and asked if, since I would not have tuition bills, I could cover the application fees for Marissa's acting workshops. She wanted to go to a drama camp in New York. It cost $2,000. He said it would be a shame for her to miss out on her dream just because money was tight, especially when I had been so lucky. I wrote the check. I wrote it because I was 18 and I still believed that love was a transaction. I thought if I paid enough into the family ledger, eventually I would be allowed to make a withdrawal. I did not realize yet that my account was frozen. By my 20s, I had built a life that looked nothing like theirs. I worked for North Pine Shield Group, a cybersecurity firm that handled threat detection for Fortune 500 companies. I spent my days hunting invisible predators in the digital ether, analyzing patterns, and fortifying defenses. It was high stakes, high stress, and highly lucrative. But to my family, I was just sitting at a computer. They did not understand what I did. And because they did not understand it, they devalued it. To my father, real work involved sweat or a uniform. To my mother, success was something you could show off at church. My career was invisible. When neighbors asked what I did, my mother would wave her hand vaguely and say I did data entry or something with the internet. She made it sound like I was playing solitaire in a basement. Marissa was the worst offender. She would mock my job publicly, turning my career into a punchline for her friends. At a 4th of July barbecue 2 years ago, I heard her telling a group of women that I was a professional nerd who lived in the Matrix. She laughed, throwing her head back, her hand resting on the arm of a man she was dating before Trent. She called me boring. She said I had no life. 10 minutes later, while I was scraping potato salad into the trash, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Marissa. "Hey Liv, huge emergency. My card got declined at the vet. Princess needs shots. Can you Venmo me 300? Promise to pay you back Friday." She never paid me back on Friday. She never paid me back at all. And the next time I saw her, she didn't mention the money. She just complained that I hadn't liked her latest Instagram post fast enough. This was the rhythm of our lives. Public disdain, private solicitation. Marissa treated me like an ATM that she was embarrassed to be seen using. She would withdraw cash and then wipe her fingerprints off the keypad. If I ever tried to say no, the family defense system activated immediately. My mother was the architect of this guilt. She had a library of phrases designed to dismantle my boundaries. If I hesitated to pay a bill, she would drop her voice to a whisper and say, "You know your father is stressed. His blood pressure is up again. Do you really want to add to that?" If I pointed out that Marissa was 30 years old and should pay her own car insurance, Mom would shake her head and say, "She is sensitive, Olivia. She is not like you. She feels things deeply. We have to protect her spirit." And the ultimate trump card, the phrase etched into the foundation of that house I bought, "Family helps family." But I learned quickly that family helps family was not a universal law. It was a one-way street. When I had the flu and needed soup, nobody came. When my car broke down on the highway, Dad said he was too tired to drive out and told me to call AEA. When I got a promotion to senior analyst, the family group chat remained silent for 3 days until Marissa posted a picture of a latte art heart, which received instant applause. In the long family dictionary, no was a synonym for cold. If I set a boundary, I was being icy. I was being difficult. I was forgetting where I came from. Yes, on the other hand, meant finally useful. When I said yes, when I signed the check, when I solved the problem, I was briefly granted entry into the inner circle. I was allowed to sit at the table and pretend I belonged. There was only one person who saw the mechanism for what it was: Aunt Rowena. Rowena was my father's older sister, a woman who had never married and had spent 40 years working in the county archives. She had eyes that looked like they had read every lie ever printed on paper. She never intervened. She never swept in to rescue me when my mother was guilt-tripping me or when Marissa was picking my pockets. She just watched. She sat in the corner of every holiday gathering, sipping her iced tea, observing the data points. I used to be angry at her silence. I wanted her to scream at them for me. But as I got older, I realized Rowena was not ignoring me. She was witnessing me. She was the only one who remembered the truth when my mother would rewrite history, claiming they had paid for my college or that Marissa had bought me a thoughtful gift. Rowena would catch my eye. She would give a microscopic nod, a slight tightening of her lips. It was a signal. "I know," the look said. I remember, last Christmas, after I'd spent 4 hours cooking a dinner that Marissa took credit for, Rowena found me in the kitchen washing dishes. She stood next to me, drying a platter. She did not say, "Poor Olivia." She did not say, "They are terrible." She simply leaned in and whispered, "You keep the receipts, do you not?" I looked at her, startled. "The paper trail," she said, her voice dry as dust. "People like this rely on memory being fluid. Ink is not fluid. Keep the receipts." That was the moment the strategy shifted. That was the moment I stopped being a daughter and started being an analyst. I treated my family like a compromised network. I stopped trying to patch the vulnerabilities and started logging the intrusions. I stopped crying over the unfairness and started building a case file. I spent the last 2 years gathering intelligence. I saved every text message where Marissa begged for money. I downloaded every bank statement showing the transfers to my father's account. I kept the voicemail where my mother admitted they could not get a mortgage because their credit was ruined. I documented the dates, the times, the amounts. I categorized them by type: housing, medical, lifestyle, bailouts. When I walked into Thanksgiving dinner today, I did not walk in hoping for a drumstick. I walked in like a prosecutor entering a courtroom. The envelope Rowena was holding was not just a legal notice, it was an exorcism. It contained the sum total of my value to them, converted into legal language that stripped away the sentimentality and left only the cold, hard math. I watched my mother across the table. Her face was frozen in that mask of confusion she wore whenever the script changed without her permission. She looked at the envelope, then at me. She was waiting for me to fix it. She was waiting for me to say it was a joke, to say I would take care of it, to say yes. She was waiting for the weather to change back to sunshine. But I was done being the climate control for this house. I was done being the flexible one. I looked at the keys Marissa had dropped in my hand, the keys to a cage I had paid for, and I felt a strange, cold sense of peace. They wanted a villain, man. I would be the villain. At least the villain gets to keep her own money. Rowena turned the page of the document. The sound was crisp, loud, and final. It was the sound of a bridge burning, and the fire was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The timeline of a disaster is rarely a straight line. It is a spiral. For me, the spiral began exactly 2 years ago, not with a scream, but with a calculated pitch over a basket of garlic knots at a mediocre Italian restaurant. My parents had invited me to dinner on a Tuesday, which should have been my first red flag. Weeknight dinners were reserved for crises or requests. We were sitting in a booth with peeling vinyl seats when my mother, Elaine, laid her hands on the table and gave me the look. It was the look that combined maternal fragility with a frantic, cornered animal desperation. She told me their landlord was selling their rental. She told me they were being priced out of Greenville. She told me they were terrified of ending up in a senior living facility that smelled like bleach and despair. Then came the pitch. My father called it the family hub. The idea was simple, or so they claimed. We would buy a large house in the suburbs, something with 4 bedrooms and a yard. It would be a generational asset. They would live there. Marissa would have a stable place to launch her life with Trent, and I would have a home base whenever I wanted to visit from Charlotte. It sounded warm. It sounded like the kind of safety net families were supposed to weave for each other. There was just one small, technical hiccup. My parents could not get a mortgage. My father explained it with a wave of his hand, blaming medical bills and an administrative error on his credit report from 3 years ago. The truth, which I found out later, was a series of maxed-out credit cards and a timeshare in Florida they had defaulted on. But at that table, listening to my mother sniffle about just wanting a garden before she died, I did not ask to see the credit report. I just felt the weight of the expectations settling on my shoulders. They needed my credit score. They needed my income history. They needed me to be the signatory. "It is just temporary," my father had said, looking me in the eye with a sincerity that I now realize he practiced in the mirror. "Just until I get that settlement from the car accident. 6 months, maybe a year. Then we will refinance, put it in our names, and pay you back every cent. You are just the bridge, Olivia. You are the bridge to keep this family safe." I signed the papers 3 weeks later. I sat in a title office that smelled of stale coffee and signed my name 30 times. I wrote a check for the down payment that decimated my savings account. It was $40,000. That was money I had saved for my own house, for my own future, for a sabbatical I wanted to take in Europe. Instead, I poured it into a 4-bedroom colonial on Oakwood Drive because I believed the lie. I believed I was the bridge. I did not realize I was actually the foundation they intended to bury themselves in. The ink was barely dry on the closing documents when the dynamic shifted. I handed the keys to my father, expecting a moment of solemn gratitude. Instead, Marissa snatched them from his hand. "Shotgun on the master suite," she yelled, running toward the front door. I stood in the driveway, blinking. "The master suite is for Mom and Dad," I said. My mother patted my arm. "Oh, let her have it, Olivia. Your father and I don't need all that space, and Marissa needs the ensuite bathroom for her makeup tutorials. She is really trying to build her brand." That was the beginning. Marissa moved in like she was the conquering queen of a country I had paid for. Within a week, she had repainted the neutral living room a stark, aggressive white because it offered better lighting for her content. She bought furniture charged to a credit card I later learned was in my father's name and staged the house. I stayed in Charlotte. I kept my small, quiet apartment because my nervous system required a 2-hour buffer zone between me and my DNA, but I followed the house on social media. That was where I learned what was happening in the property I owned. Marissa started posting home tours on Instagram and TikTok. She would walk through the kitchen, trailing her hand over the granite countertops I had paid for, and say things like, "We finally found our dream home," or "So blessed to have this space for our future." She never mentioned me. She never mentioned that her sister was the reason she wasn't living in a basement apartment. She tagged furniture brands and decor companies, captioning photos with homeowner and new beginnings. I remember commenting on one post, just a simple heart emoji and the words, "Looks great." She deleted my comment within 10 minutes. When I texted her to ask why, she said, "I am trying to curate a specific aesthetic. Olivia, you wouldn't understand the algorithm. Personal comments mess up the engagement metrics. I was the landlord, but I was treated like a ghost. The financial arrangement was supposed to be straightforward. I paid the mortgage, and they paid the utilities and the grocery bills, while putting money aside to buy me out, eventually. That plan lasted exactly 1 billing cycle. The first month, my father called me. His voice was tight. He said the move had been more expensive than they anticipated. The truck rental, the connection fees, the deposits. Could I cover the first month's electric and water? Just this once, I paid it. The second month, it was my mother. She was crying. Dad's blood pressure medication had gone up, and the insurance gap meant they had to pay out of pocket. If they paid the gas bill, they couldn't buy the pills. Did I want my father to have a stroke? I paid the gas bill. By month 6, the requests stopped being requests and became expectations. I was paying the mortgage, the insurance, the property taxes, the utilities, and the internet. The internet had to be the highest speed tier available, of course, because Marissa needed the bandwidth for her streaming. Whenever I tried to bring up the temporary nature of this arrangement, the walls went up. "We will pay you back when we can," my mother would say, her voice taking on a wounded edge. It was the same tone people used when they talked about the weather changing. It was vague, hopeful, and entirely out of their control. "You know how hard it is right now. Why are you so obsessed with money? You have that big job. You are doing fine." I was not doing fine. I was bleeding money. I was working overtime shifts at North Pine Shield Group, taking on weekend consults, just to keep up with the expenses of a house I did not live in. Marissa, meanwhile, was thriving. She contributed nothing to the household finances. Her contribution was energy. She was planning her wedding to Trent, a wedding that seemed to have an unlimited budget despite neither of them having a full-time job. Trent was a consultant, which in his case meant he spent a lot of time at the gym and occasionally sold a protein supplement to his friends. Marissa started using pregnancy hormones as an excuse for her behavior a full year before she was even pregnant. If she snapped at me for visiting on a weekend without calling, first visiting my own house, my mother would hush me. "She is hormonal," Mom would whisper. "They are trying for a baby. It is very stressful. Her body is going through changes." "She isn't pregnant yet," I would point out. "But she feels pregnant," Mom would insist. "The intent is there. You need to be supportive." So I was paying for the house, the utilities, and now I was paying for the emotional overhead of a hypothetical pregnancy. The house became a leash. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach clenched. Was it a broken pipe? Was it a tax bill? Was it a demand for a new dishwasher because the old one didn't match the vibe? I felt like I was drowning in shallow water, held down by the people who were supposed to be teaching me how to swim. The only person who noticed the water rising was Aunt Rowena. It was at a 4th of July barbecue. 6 months ago, I was in the backyard, staring at the new deck furniture Marissa had bought, likely with money my parents had borrowed from a neighbor. Rowena came up beside me. She was holding a plate of potato salad she hadn't touched. "It is a nice house," Rowena said, looking at the vinyl siding. "It is," I said, my voice flat. "It is in your name," she stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes. But they tell people it is theirs." I looked at her. Rowena's eyes were magnified by her glasses, but they were sharp. "They tell people a lot of things," I said. Rowena took a step closer. She lowered her voice, even though the music was loud. "Olivia, listen to me. Families like ours, they have a way of rewriting history while it is still happening. They say things out loud until they believe them, and if you are not careful, their version becomes the truth." She paused, looking over at Marissa, who was recording a TikTok dance on the lawn while Trent held the ring light. "Keep everything," Rowena whispered. "Every text, every email, every receipt. Do not delete a single thing, because the day will come when they will look you in the eye and tell you that you never paid a dime, and they will believe it." Her warning chilled me. I had been annoyed. Yes, I had been resentful, but I hadn't been paranoid. Rowena made me realize that I was playing a game I didn't even know the rules to. I took her advice. I went home to Charlotte that night and started a digital folder. I scanned every check. I screenshotted every text message where my mother asked for money. I saved the voicemails. I built a database of my own exploitation. And then, 3 months ago, I found the first crack in the facade that let me see the rot underneath. I was at the house to fix a leaky faucet because my father claimed he was too dizzy to call a plumber. I was sorting through the mail on the kitchen counter, a pile that was usually hidden from me, when I saw an envelope. It was from a credit card company, but it wasn't addressed to Robert Long or Elaine Long, and it wasn't addressed to Marissa. It was addressed to Olivia Long. I frowned. I didn't have a card with that bank. I picked it up. It felt thin, like a rejection letter or a statement. I opened it. It was a statement for a credit card I had never applied for. The balance was $4,000. The charges were all local: a furniture store in Greenville, a high-end baby boutique, a liquor store, and a series of charges at a spa. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at the date the account was opened. It was 2 months prior. The address on file was this house. Someone had used my name, my social security number, which they likely had from the mortgage paperwork sitting in the unlocked filing cabinet, and opened a line of credit. I looked up. Marissa was in the living room, laughing at something on her phone. My mother was in the kitchen, humming as she chopped carrots. They hadn't just used me for the mortgage. They hadn't just used me for the bills. They had decided that my identity was a community resource. They had decided that being Olivia Long was a distinct asset class that they could liquidate whenever they wanted. I didn't confront them then. I didn't scream. I didn't wave the paper in the air. The realization was too cold, too precise for screaming. I slipped the letter into my bag. I fixed the faucet. I said goodbye to my mother and hugged her, feeling her frail, bird-like bones, and realizing that those bones were capable of picking me clean. I drove back to Charlotte in silence. That was the night I stopped being the daughter who wanted to be loved. That was the night I became the cybersecurity analyst who had discovered a breach. Rowena was right. They were rewriting history. But they forgot that I was the one who kept the logs, and I was about to audit the entire system. The discovery of that single credit card statement in the kitchen was not the end of the mystery. It was merely the first thread in a sweater that was about to unravel completely. I returned to Charlotte that night with the envelope burning a hole in my passenger seat. I did not sleep. Instead, at 3 a.m, bathed in the blue light of my multiple monitors, I did what I should have done the moment I signed the deed. I audited my own life. I logged into the credit bureau portals. The loading icons spun for what felt like hours, a digital wheel of fortune where the prize was betrayal. When the report finally populated, my stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my knees. It was not just one card. There was a secondary line of credit attached to the house address. Opened 6 months ago, there were inquiries from furniture stores. There was a final reminder from a medical financing company for a procedure I never had. With my name spelled correctly, Olivia, but the birth year off by exactly 4 years. Marissa's birth year. They were not just spending my money anymore, they were wearing my identity like a costume. I waited until 9 a.m. to call my mother. I needed to be calm. I needed to be surgical. When she answered, her voice was thick with sleep, or perhaps just the lethargy of someone who has never had to be accountable for a crisis. "Mom," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "Why is there a credit line in my name linked to the Oakwood address, and why does the credit report show $5,000 in furniture charges?" There was a pause, a long, heavy pause, where I could hear the television humming in the background. "Olivia, honestly," she sighed, the sound of a martyr being asked to carry one more cross. "It is too early for this. Your father had a rough night. His back is spasming again. Do you really want to start an interrogation while he's in pain?" "I am not asking about Dad's back," I said, my voice steady. "I am asking about fraud. Mom, this is identity theft. Who opened these accounts?" "Don't use that word," she snapped, her tone shifting from victim to aggressor instantly. "It is not theft. We are family. We needed a few things for the house. Marissa is fragile right now. She is nesting. She just wanted the place to feel like a home. We were going to pay it off when the tax refund comes in. You used my social security number without asking me. We didn't want to bother you," she cried. "You are always so busy with your computer work. You act like we are strangers. We are your parents. Olivia, we raised you, and now you are counting pennies while your sister is trying to build a life. You are overreacting. You always overreact." She hung up. The click of the line disconnecting was the sound of the final door closing. She did not deny it. She did not apologize. She justified it. In her mind, my credit score was just another resource in the family pantry, sitting right next to the canned corn, available for whoever was hungry. I did not call back. Instead, I called Aunt Rowena. "It is worse than we thought," I told her. "I know," Rowena said. She didn't ask for details. She simply gave me an address. "Be there at 2 o'clock. Her name is Naomi Vale. She does not do cookies and tea. She does deeds and evictions." Naomi Vale's office was in a glass building in downtown Greenville, far away from the suburban sprawl where my family played house. Naomi was a woman made of sharp angles and expensive tailoring. She sat behind a desk that had nothing on it but a laptop and a notepad. No pictures of children, no stress balls. She looked like she was allergic to inefficiency. Rowena sat in the corner chair, silent as a gargoyle. I laid everything out: the deed, the mortgage statements, the credit report, the text messages where Marissa thanked me for helping out while simultaneously mocking me on Facebook. Naomi reviewed the documents in silence. Her eyes scanned the pages with terrifying speed. After 10 minutes, she set the papers down and folded her hands. "Legally," Naomi said, her voice cool and crisp, "the house is yours, 100%. The deed is in the name of Olivia Long. The mortgage is in the name of Olivia Long. There is no lease agreement. There is no rent-to-own contract. In the eyes of the law, Your parents and your sister are guests who have overstayed their welcome." I felt a wave of relief so profound it made me dizzy. "So I can kick them out." "You can," Naomi said. "But we have to be careful. In South Carolina, if they can prove they have contributed significantly to the equity or the maintenance, they might try to claim an equitable interest. Have they paid for anything renovation's major repairs?" "No," I said. "I paid for the roof repair. I paid for the HV. AC service. They bought furniture. But apparently, they bought it with my credit." "Good," Naomi said, making a note. "That is actually good for us. It proves they have no financial stake. However, you need to be prepared. When people like this feel control slipping, they do not just argue, they get creative with paperwork." "What do you mean?" "I mean I have seen families forge quit-claim deeds," Naomi said, her eyes locking onto mine. "I have seen them fake lease agreements. I have seen them file liens against the property for caretaker services. We need to get ahead of the narrative. We need to document that this was never a partnership. It was charity." We spent the next 2 hours building a fortress of evidence. We printed out the bank transfers showing every mortgage payment came from my account. We printed the text messages where my father apologized for being short this month again and again. We screenshotted Marissa's Instagram posts where she called the house my sanctuary, and then cross-referenced them with the dates I paid the property taxes. Naomi drafted a series of certified letters. They were not eviction notices yet. They were clarification of occupancy notices. They stated clearly that there was no lease, that the occupancy was at will, and that no authorization had been given for any alterations or financial encumbrances on the property. "We will send these," Naomi said. "It puts them on notice. It stops the clock on any adverse possession claims, and it tells them you are watching." I left Naomi's office feeling lighter. But the dread wasn't gone. It had just shifted shape. It was no longer a vague anxiety. It was a specific anticipation of the blowback. I decided to do a little more digging on my own. Naomi had warned me about the financial entanglement, so I went to the one place my family told the truth, the internet. I created a burner account on Facebook, a profile with a stock photo of a landscape and a generic name, and requested to join the private group Marissa administered. It was called Marissa's Journey Faith, Family, and Future. It had 300 members, mostly church friends, distant cousins, and girls she went to high school with. She accepted the request within an hour. I scrolled back through the timeline. It was a shrine to her own victimhood and triumph. But then I saw the post from 2 weeks ago. It was a photo of Marissa and Trent standing in my kitchen, holding a sign that said, "Growing our family." The caption read, "We are so blessed." As many of you know, we are saving up for our forever home so we can have space for the little ones. It is so hard in this economy, especially with zero help from certain family members who have plenty but refuse to share. But we are trusting God. If you feel led to support our building fund, link in bio. I clicked the link. It went to a crowdfunding page, Marissa and Trent's Dream Home Fund. The description was a masterpiece of fiction. It claimed they were currently living in a cramped, temporary situation, and that they were doing it all on their own. It implied that they were on the verge of homelessness if they didn't get help. I looked at the donation history. $50 from Mrs. Higgins, the choir director, $100 from a cousin in Ohio, $20 from a girl Marissa bullied in 10th grade. The total raised was over $6,000. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. They weren't just living in my house for free. They weren't just stealing my identity to buy sofas. They were actively soliciting charity from strangers by lying about their situation, painting me as the villain who wouldn't help. While I was literally paying for the roof over their heads, I screenshotted everything. The posts. The comments where people said, "Your sister sounds awful," and Marissa replied with a sad face emoji. The donation list. I sent the files to Naomi. Then I texted Rowena. "They are running a scam." I wrote. Rowena replied instantly. "I know. Trent told the deacon they were saving for a down payment. He didn't mention they haven't paid a utility bill in 2 years. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store, watching shoppers push carts full of Thanksgiving supplies. I realized then that a confrontation at the dinner table wouldn't be enough. Screaming wouldn't be enough. If I just yelled at them, they would cry. They would play the victim. They would tell everyone I was crazy. I needed to cut the cord so cleanly that there was nothing left to grab. I didn't want an apology. I wanted a closing date. I called Naomi back. "Draft the sale contract," I said. "I don't want to just send a warning. I want to sell the house. I want it listed. I want a timeline." "Are you sure?" Naomi asked. "Once we list it, there is no going back. This is the nuclear option." "I am sure," I said. "And Naomi, I want the closing date set for 30 days from now. I want them out by the end of the year." "Understood," she said. "I will have the papers ready for Thanksgiving. You can serve them with the dessert." "No," I said, thinking of the envelope sitting on my passenger seat. "I won't serve it with dessert. I'll serve it as the main course." I looked at the final reminder notice one last time before shoving it into the glove compartment. They wanted a bigger house. They wanted to play the victim. Fine. I would give them exactly what they asked for. I would give them a story so dramatic, so tragic, that Marissa could post about it for years, but she would be posting it from a rental apartment she had to pay for herself. I started the engine. I had a long drive to Greenville ahead of me, and I had to practice my smile. I had to walk into that house, hug my mother, congratulate my sister, and pretend I didn't know that the ground beneath their feet was already gone. I had to be the perfect, flexible daughter one last time, because the next time I spoke the truth, I wanted to make sure it was under oath. The mythology of the triplets did not begin at the dinner table. It began weeks earlier, constructed with the careful pacing of a reality television season finale. Marissa started the soft launch of her pregnancy performance in early November, long before any medical professional could have possibly confirmed 3 distinct heartbeats. It started with the physical comedy. We were at a family brunch I had unfortunately agreed to pay for, and Marissa spent the entire meal pressing her hand against her completely flat stomach. She would pause mid-conversation, wince delicately, and whisper about how crowded she felt inside. She talked about needing space, the way an astronaut talks about oxygen. She would look around the 4-bedroom house I was financing, sigh loudly, and say that the walls were closing in on her. My mother, Elaine, was her eager co-conspirator. In public, Mom was rehearsing the role of the century. She stopped strangers in the grocery store to tell them she was going to be a grandmother times 3. She accepted preemptive congratulations with a tearful humility that made my teeth ache, but in private, her tone with me was sharp and managing. She called me 3 times a week, not to ask how I was, but to coach me on my reaction. "You need to be supportive, Olivia," she would say, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper she used when she was asking for money. "Marissa is terrified. 3 babies. Can you imagine the stress? The least you can do is make sure she doesn't have to worry about housing. Don't be cold. Don't ask questions about dates or doctors. Just smile and nod. She needs your energy to be positive." My energy was not positive. My energy was investigative. While Marissa played the fragile vessel of life, Trent decided to play the role of the suffering architect. He began acting as if the transfer of property was already a done deal. I received an alert from the security system I had installed, one of the few things I still controlled remotely, showing a van parked in the driveway. It was a contracting company. I watched the video feed from my desk in Charlotte. Trent was walking a contractor through the living room. I could not hear the audio, but I saw Trent gesturing grandly at the wall separating the dining room from the kitchen. He made a chopping motion with his hand. He was getting quotes to knock down a load-bearing wall in a house he did not own, to create an open concept flow for children who did not exist. I called the contractor later that afternoon, pretending to be a confused administrative assistant confirming an appointment. The man on the phone was chatty. He told me that Mr. Sutherland was looking to do about $15,000 worth of renovations before the nursery wing was installed. $15,000. And Trent had told the man to bill it to the owner on file, assuming the contractor would just look up the deed and send the invoice to me. The audacity was so pure it was almost impressive. Then came the guest list. Thanksgiving was usually a small, claustrophobic affair, just the four of us. Plus Aunt Rowena and whatever stray relative my mother felt sorry for. But this year, the roster had expanded. Marissa had invited her entire support system. There were people from her church choir. There were 3 women from her Mommy and Me group, a group she had joined despite not having a child yet, claiming she wanted to be proactive. I realized the strategy immediately. These people were not guests. They were witnesses. They were a jury. Marissa was stacking the room with people who would clap when she announced the triplets, and then stare at me with judgmental eyes if I hesitated to hand over my checkbook. She was crowdsourcing the peer pressure. She knew I could say no to her. She did not think I could say no to a room full of weeping, joyous women holding sparkling cider. I dug deeper into the digital narrative she was spinning. I went back to the private Facebook group I had infiltrated. The story there had evolved. It was no longer just about needing help. It was about a specific promise. Marissa had posted a long, emotional status update 2 days ago. So overwhelmed by the news, Triplets God is testing us. But he also provides, my big sister, who has been so blessed in her career, promised us years ago that if we ever had a big family, she would upgrade us to the estate home we deserve. I am so firmly believing that she will honor that promise this Thanksgiving. It is going to be a miracle. There were 42 comments. Most of them were variations of God is good and what a wonderful sister, but a few were darker. One woman wrote, "She better come through. You have done so much for her." I stared at the screen. I had never promised her a house. I had never promised her a shed. But that didn't matter. In the court of public opinion, the verdict had already been rendered. If I didn't buy the mansion, I was breaking a vow. I met Rowena for coffee the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We sat in a booth in the back, far away from anyone who might know the Long family. Rowena looked tired. She had been fielding calls from my mother, who was trying to recruit her to the Team Triplets cheerleading squad. "Why is she doing this?" I asked, stirring my black coffee. "Why triplets? Twins would have been believable. 1 baby is enough to demand a bedroom. Why escalate it to 3? It is absurd." Rowena adjusted her glasses and looked at me with that pitying sharpness she reserved for moments when I was being too logical. "It is not about the babies. Olivia," she said, "it has never been about the babies. If she just had a baby, she would be a mother. Lots of people are mothers. But if she has triplets, she is a celebrity. She is a martyr. She is a phenomenon." Rowena leaned in. "And more importantly, she needs the house to match the story. She doesn't want a bigger house because she needs the square footage. She wants a bigger house because she wants to look like she is winning. She wants the high ceilings and the grand staircase so she can post pictures of them. You are just the production assistant who pays for the set design." "She is going to be humiliated," I said. "When there are no babies, when the lie falls apart." "She thinks she can worry about that later," Rowena said. "Or maybe she thinks if she gets the house first, she can fake a miscarriage later and keep the property out of sympathy. Do not underestimate her capacity to monetize tragedy." That thought chilled me to the bone. The idea that she would use a fake loss to secure a real asset was a level of depravity I hadn't wanted to consider. I left the coffee shop and drove straight to a quiet neighborhood in Charlotte. I had an appointment. While my family was measuring my living room for demolition, I was touring a 2-bedroom townhouse on a street lined with old oak trees. It was small. It was silent. The walls were painted a soft gray. There was no family hub energy here. It felt like a fortress of solitude. I signed the lease on the spot. I paid the deposit with a cashier's check. I wanted a place that was legally, physically, and spiritually disconnected from the chaos in Greenville. I got the keys that afternoon. I stood in the empty living room, breathing in the smell of fresh paint and dust, and felt the first true moment of calm I had experienced in 2 years. I had an exit strategy. Now I just needed to survive the dinner. but the stakes were about to get higher than just social pressure. I was packing my bag for the trip to Greenville when my phone rang. It was Naomi Vale, my attorney. It was 6 in the evening, past business hours. Naomi did not call after 5 unless something was burning. "Olivia," she said. Her voice was missing its usual cool detachment. It sounded tight. "Are you sitting down?" "I am standing," I said, zipping up my suitcase. "What happened? Did they file a complaint?" "No," Naomi said. "I have alerts set up on the county registrar's digital filing system for your property. Just in case, about 20 minutes ago, a document was uploaded to the pending queue." I stopped moving. "What kind of document?" "It is a quitclaim deed," Naomi said. "It attempts to transfer ownership of the property at 112 Oakwood Drive from Olivia Long to Marissa Long and Trent Sutherland for the consideration of $1. The room seemed to tilt sideways. A quitclaim deed. That was the nuclear option of real estate theft. It was a document used to sign over rights quickly, usually between family members during a divorce or a marriage. "They forged my signature," I whispered. "It appears so," Naomi said. "It is a sloppy job. The notary stamp looks like a digital copy-paste job from a previous document. But they tried to file it electronically. If I hadn't flagged the parcel number, it might have slipped into the processing queue and clouded the title for months." "Did it go through?" "No," Naomi said. "I blocked it. I filed an immediate objection and flagged it as fraudulent with the clerk. It is dead in the water. But Olivia, listen to me carefully. This is no longer a civil dispute about mooching relatives. This is attempted grand larceny. This is a felony. They tried to steal a house." I sat down on the edge of my bed. I thought about the envelope I had prepared for Thanksgiving. The notice to vacate. The proof of payments. It suddenly felt insufficient. I wasn't just dealing with entitled siblings anymore. I was dealing with criminals who were desperate enough to risk prison time to maintain their lifestyle. "What do I do?" I asked. "You go to Thanksgiving," Naomi said, her voice turning cold and sharp. "You let them make their announcement. You let them dig the hole, and then you bury them. I will email you a copy of the fraudulent filing. Print it out, add it to your envelope, and Olivia, do not let them sign anything. Do not let them touch your phone. They are dangerous." I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling, not with fear, but with a cold, clarifying rage. They had tried to steal my house from under me while smiling to my face. I walked over to my printer. I waited for the email from Naomi to arrive. When it did, I printed the document. I looked at the signature at the bottom, a shaky, jagged scrawl that was supposed to be mine. It looked nothing like my handwriting. It looked like desperation. I slid the paper into the envelope, right behind the eviction notice. Marissa wanted a bigger house. She wanted to look like she was winning. Well, she was about to get her wish. She was going to be the center of attention. She was going to have an audience, and I was going to give her a performance that no one in that room would ever forget. I zipped up my bag. I was ready to go home. The strategy for dismantling a life, I discovered, is not so different from the strategy for securing a compromised network. You do not just patch the breach. You isolate the infected nodes. You revoke all administrative privileges, and you watch the traffic logs until you find the source code of the virus. After Naomi alerted me to the fraudulent quitclaim deed, I did not sleep. Rage is a stimulant, but cold, calculated preparation is a performance enhancer. I spent the next 72 hours executing a plan that was part corporate restructuring and part bank heist. The first step was the legal firewall. Naomi moved with a terrifying efficiency. She filed an immediate challenge to the quitclaim deed with the county clerk. It was not a difficult argument to make. The signature on the document looked like someone had tried to write my name with their non-dominant hand while riding a roller coaster. It was jagged and hesitant. Furthermore, the notary stamp belonged to a man who had lost his license 4 years ago for fraud. Naomi flagged the filing as a criminal act, effectively freezing the title. The house could not be transferred, sold, or borrowed against by anyone but me. The trap was set. Now I just had to make sure the rats were inside when it snapped. Step 2 was the financial blackout. I took the day off work. I sat in my new, empty townhouse in Charlotte with 3 laptops open on the kitchen island. I went through my digital life with a scalpel. I changed every password, my banking login, my email, my retirement accounts, my social media. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything, linking it to a burner phone I had bought specifically for this purpose, just in case my family had found a way to clone my SIM card. Then I moved the money. I transferred my primary savings and checking balances to a new bank, one that had no branches in Greenville. I redirected my direct deposit. I called the credit card companies and froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. But the most satisfying part was severing the lifestyle subsidies. I pulled up the statement for the joint account I had foolishly kept open for house emergencies. I saw the auto payments, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify Family Plan, a gym membership in Greenville that cost $80 a month, an unlimited data plan for 4 devices. I did not just stop the payments. I canceled the services entirely. I imagined the scene that would play out in a few days. Trent trying to log in to watch a movie and seeing the update payment method screen. Marissa trying to stream music during her pregnancy meditation and getting an ad. It was petty, perhaps, but it was also necessary. I needed them to feel the friction of real life. I needed them to understand that the magic frictionless existence they enjoyed was powered by my labor. And the generator had just been shut down. I kept the utilities on. I paid the electricity and the water because I needed the house to remain habitable for the sale. I paid the insurance. I paid the mortgage. Anything that protected my credit score or the physical asset remained. Anything that funded their comfort was deleted. Step 3 was the listing. I had told Naomi I wanted to sell, but I knew I couldn't put a for sale sign in the yard. If Marissa saw a sign, she would physically rip it out of the ground. She would stage a protest. She would chain herself to the porch railing and live stream it. So I went with a pocket listing. I hired a real estate agent named Sarah, a woman recommended by Naomi who specialized in high-conflict sales. Sarah understood the assignment. The house would not go on Zillow immediately. It would be circulated privately among a network of serious buyers who were looking for investment properties or quick closings. "We need to show the house," Sarah told me over the phone. "Buyers need to see the bones." "You can't go when they are there," I said. "My sister will throw a vase at you." "When are they out?" Sarah asked. I looked at the schedule I had built based on their social media habits. Tuesday mornings. My mom goes to Bible study from 9 to 12. Marissa goes to her prenatal yoga class, which is actually just her sitting at a coffee shop scrolling Instagram from 10 to 12. Trent usually goes to the gym around 11. "I have an investor who can look at 11:15 on Tuesday," Sarah said. "We will be in and out in 20 minutes. "Do it," I said. "Tell them the tenants are volatile. Tell them I am offering a discount for a quick close with vacancy guaranteed." "Consider it done," Sarah said. The walls were closing in on them, and they didn't even know it. They were measuring for nurseries while I was measuring for a liquidation sale. Step 4 was the personnel. I drove to Rowena's apartment 2 nights before Thanksgiving. She lived in a building that smelled of old books and peppermint tea. When she opened the door, she looked at the thick binder in my hands. "Is that the weapon?" she asked. "It is the evidence," I corrected. We sat at her small kitchen table. I walked her through the plan. I showed her the deed. I showed her the fraudulent quitclaim attempt. I showed her the credit report with the identity theft. "I am going to bring this envelope to dinner," I told her. "But I can't be the one to read it. Rowena, if I start reading it, Mom will cry. She will interrupt me. She will talk about how I am being mean to my pregnant sister. She knows how to push my buttons. She installed them." Rowena nodded slowly. She reached out and placed her hand on the binder. Her fingers were cool and dry. "You want me to be the voice of God," she said. "I want you to be the voice of reality." I said, "They can't manipulate you. You don't want anything from them. You aren't afraid of them." "I will do it," Rowena said. "I will read every word, and I will enjoy it." She paused, looking at the stack of papers. "But you need something else. You need something for Trent. Trent, I asked. Trent is part of the problem. He tried to file the deed. Trent is a follower, Rowena said. He is greedy, yes, but he is also simple. He believes Marissa. He believes the story she tells him. He thinks you are the rich, stingy sister who promised a house. He thinks the triplets are real. He thinks he is fighting for his family. If you want to break them, you have to break him away from her. She was right. Trent was a parasite, but he was a parasite who thought he was a host. I spent the next night compiling a specific folder for Trent. I included the text messages Marissa had sent me over the years, mocking him. I included the bank statements showing that the money he thought she was saving for the house fund had actually been spent on designer bags and spa days. I wanted him to see that he wasn't a partner in the heist. He was just another mark. I was feeling prepared. I felt like a general surveying the battlefield. But the final piece of ammunition did not come from my credit report or my lawyer. It came from a stranger. It was Wednesday afternoon. I was in my car, double-checking the address for the U-Haul rental I would need for the final move, when my phone buzzed. It was a direct message on Instagram. The sender was a woman named Jessica. I recognized the name. She was one of Marissa's best friends from high school, the kind of friend Marissa only talked to when she needed to fill a table at a brunch. Hey Olivia, the message read. Hope you are doing well. I saw Marissa's post about the triplets. That is so wild. Congrats to the family. I stared at the screen. I didn't respond. A second message popped up. I was actually wondering if you knew which fertility clinic she is using. My cousin is struggling with IVF, and Marissa's results are just amazing for her age. I didn't want to ask her directly and seem nosy about medical stuff, but if you knew the doctor's name, I would love to pass it on. I froze. The question was innocent, but the implication was devastating. Jessica assumed it was IVF. Of course she did. Spontaneous triplets were incredibly rare, but Marissa had never mentioned a clinic. She had never mentioned injections, or egg retrieval, or the thousands of dollars that process cost. I typed back carefully. I actually don't know the specific clinic. Jessica. She has been very private about the medical side. Oh, I get it, Jessica replied. It just seems so fast. She was drinking margaritas with us at the bonfire like 3 weeks ago, and now she is showing an ultrasound with 3 heartbeats. Crazy how life works. 3 weeks ago, you cannot drink alcohol during IVF injections, and you certainly do not have a visible ultrasound of 3 fetuses 3 weeks after conception. The math was impossible. I went to Marissa's Facebook page. I found the post she had made the day before the proof she had been teasing. It was a grainy photo of an ultrasound strip. It showed 3 distinct gestational sacs. The caption was just 3 heart emojis and the date November 2026. Coming soon. I downloaded the image. I opened a reverse image search tool on my laptop. It was a long shot. People posted ultrasounds all the time. I uploaded Marissa's photo. The search engine spun. A dozen results appeared. My blood ran cold. The image was not from a clinic in Greenville. It was not from a clinic in South Carolina. It was not even from this year. The original image belonged to a mommy blogger in Ohio. It had been posted 4 years ago. The blog post was titled, Our Miracle Trio, The Journey to 3. Marissa had cropped out the date and the patient name from the top of the strip. She had applied a filter to make it look newer, grainier, but the positioning of the sacs was identical. The curvature of the uterus was identical. It was the same photo. I sat back in my seat, the air leaving my lungs. There were no triplets. I knew she was manipulative. I knew she was a liar. I suspected she was exaggerating the timeline, or maybe lying about the number of babies to get the house. But I had assumed there was at least a pregnancy. I assumed there was a seed of truth she was watering with lies. But there was nothing. It was all a fabrication. The nausea, the hormones, the need for space. It was a complete fiction designed to extort a piece of real estate from me. I picked up my phone and called the number on the blog for the woman in Ohio. It was a business number. A cheerful voice answered. Hi, this is Sarah from the Miracle Trio blog. Hi, Sarah, I said. My name is Olivia. This is going to sound incredibly strange, but I think my sister is using your ultrasound photo to fake a pregnancy to extort money from our family." There was a silence on the line. Then Sarah sighed, a sound of exhausted resignation. "Is it the one with the 3 sacks in a triangle formation? From 2021? "Yes," I said. "She is the 3rd one this month," Sarah said. "People steal it from Pinterest. Do you want me to send you the original file with the metadata? It proves the date and location." "Yes," I said. "Please." 5 minutes later, the email arrived. I opened it. There it was, the high-resolution original. The date stamp was clear, February 12th, 2021. The patient name, Sarah Jenkins. I printed the image. I printed Marissa's Facebook post. I placed them side by side. The match was undeniable. I added the 2 pages to the back of the binder. I had thought I was walking into Thanksgiving with a legal defense. I realized now I was walking in with a murder weapon. The countdown was over. The house was listed. The accounts were locked. The lawyer was ready. And I held the proof that the hostages Marissa was using to hold us all captive did not even exist. I looked at the clock. It was time to drive to Greenville. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked calm. I looked terrifying. I was ready to serve dinner. The driveway of the house on Oakwood Drive looked less like a family gathering and more like the parking lot of a mid-tier used car dealership. There were vehicles squeezed onto the lawn and blocked into the cul-de-sac. I maneuvered my sedan into the last available spot near the mailbox. Noting the bumper stickers on the cars, there were baby on board decals and church choir insignias. Marissa had not just invited family, she had invited a jury. I checked my phone one last time. The security feed showed the living room was already at capacity. I took a deep breath of the cold November air, adjusted the strap of my tote bag which contained the heavy binder Rowena and I had prepared, and walked to the front door. I was not entering a home. I was entering a crime scene where the crime was still in progress. Inside, the heat hit me first, smelling of roasted turkey and expensive perfume. The noise was overwhelming. Marissa had curated a crowd that served 2 purposes: to validate her victimhood and to witness her triumph. I saw the women from her Mommy and Me group huddled near the fireplace, clutching non-alcoholic ciders. I saw the deacon from my parents' church. I saw neighbors I barely recognized. My mother, Elaine, spotted me immediately. She rushed over, her face flushed with the frantic energy of a stage manager whose lead actress is drunk. "You are late," she hissed, though her smile didn't waver for the room. "And you look severe. Could you not have worn something softer, a floral print? You look like you are going to a deposition." "I dressed for the occasion," I said. She steered me toward the dining room. The table had been extended with 2 card tables covered in mismatched tablecloths to accommodate the crowd. I looked for my place card. I found it at the very far end, squeezed between the pantry door and the kids' table, where my cousin's toddlers were already smashing peas into the carpet. It was a deliberate geography. Marissa and Trent sat at the head of the table, flanked by my parents and the most important guests, the donors. The gossips, the influencers. I was placed in the servants' quarters, close enough to the kitchen to fetch refills, but far enough away to be ignored. I sat down. Aunt Rowena was seated across from me. She gave me a nearly imperceptible nod. Her hand rested on the table, calm and steady. She was ready. Dinner was a blur of passing dishes and performative gratitude. I ate nothing. I watched Trent. He was in high spirits, laughing loudly at his own jokes, pouring wine for the deacon, acting like the lord of the manor. He looked at the walls as if he were already imagining which ones he would knock down. He had no idea that the ground beneath his feet had already been sold. Then, the moment arrived. It happened exactly as I knew it would, scripted down to the second. Marissa stood up. She tapped her spoon against her glass. The crystal rang out, sharp and demanding. The room fell into a hush. Phones were raised instantly. I counted 6 people recording. Marissa smoothed her hand over her stomach, tilting her head to catch the light from the chandelier I had paid for. "Family, friends," she began. her voice trembling with a practiced vulnerability. "Trent and I have been keeping a secret. It has been so hard not to share, especially with everything we have been going through." She paused for effect. My mother let out a small, encouraging sob. "We went to the doctor," Marissa continued, beaming, "and we found out that our blessings are multiplying. I am pregnant." The room gasped. "With triplets," she whispered, loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. The explosion of noise was immediate. My mother clapped her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My father stood up and shook Trent's hand, beaming with a pride he had never shown for any of my promotions. The guests cheered. The church ladies cooed. It was a standing ovation for a biological function that hadn't even happened. Marissa basked in it. She looked like a queen accepting tribute. Then, her eyes found me at the end of the table. The warmth vanished from her face, replaced by the steely entitlement I knew so well. She walked the length of the room. The guests parted for her. She stopped in front of me, reached into the pocket of her dress, and pulled out a set of keys. They jangled loudly in the silence. "Obviously," she announced, her voice pitching up so the camera phones could catch every syllable. "We cannot stay in this house. 3 babies, we would be sleeping in the bathtub." She dropped the keys into my open palm. They hit my skin with a cold, heavy finality. "You are buying us a bigger house, Olivia," she said. "I need you to start looking this week. 4 bedrooms minimum, a big yard, close to Mom, and maybe a pool, for the kids' therapy later on." The room chuckled. It was a nervous, compliant sound. They laughed because laughter is safer than thinking about the audacity of the demand. They laughed because they had been told I was the rich, cold sister who owed this to her. Trent called out from the head of the table, leaning back with a glass of wine I had bought. "Yeah, Liv, we will send you the Zillow links tonight. Get your checkbook ready." My mother wiped her eyes. "Oh, Olivia, isn't it wonderful? You can finally do something meaningful with all that money you hoard." The silence stretched. Everyone was looking at me. They were waiting for the submission. They were waiting for me to nod, to smile, to open the banking app and transfer my life force to them one more time. I closed my fingers around the keys. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. "Congratulations," I said. My voice was level, projecting clearly to the back of the room. Marissa smiled, a smug, satisfied curling of her lips. She thought she had won. "I am so glad you brought this up," I continued, "because I actually have some news too. I already found a place." Marissa's eyes lit up. "You did already. Where is it? Is it the one in Silver Creek?" "No," I said. "It is a townhouse in Charlotte, and it is not for you." I paused, letting the words hang there. "It is for me. I signed the lease yesterday. I am moving tomorrow." The smile slid off Marissa's face like oil. What are you talking about? You can't move. You live in Charlotte. You have an apartment." "I gave up the apartment," I said. "And I'm leaving this dynamic." "But the house?" Marissa said, her voice rising to a shriek. "We need a house. You promised. You can't just be selfish when I'm carrying 3 children." "I never promised you a house," I said calmly. "And I am not being selfish. I am being evicted. By myself." "She is joking," Marissa yelled, turning to the guests, her laugh frantic and high-pitched. "She is always so dramatic. She thinks she is funny. Olivia, stop it. You are ruining the moment. You don't understand family." "I understand family perfectly," I said. "That is why I brought receipts." I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick binder. I placed it on the table. The sound of the heavy paper hitting the wood echoed in the silent room. "Rowena," I said, turning to my aunt, "would you please read the first document? I want to make sure everyone here understands the legal standing of the roof over their heads." Rowena opened the binder. She did not look at my parents. She did not look at Marissa. She adjusted her glasses and began to read. Her voice was dry, factual, and devastating. "Deed of trust," Rowena read. "Property address, 112 Oakwood Drive. Owner of record Olivia Long. Sole owner. No co-signers. My mother stopped crying. Her hands fell to the table. Rowena, what are you doing? She whispered. Rowena ignored her. She turned the page. Mortgage payment history. Account holder. Olivia Long. Total payments made to date $48,320. Contributions from Robert and Elaine Long, 0. Contributions from Marissa Long and Trent Sutherland, 0. The guests shifted in their seats. The church ladies exchanged looks. This was not the story they had been told. They had been told I was the stingy sister. They had been told Marissa was struggling to pay a mortgage I supposedly helped with. Utility payments, Rowena continued, relentless. Electric paid by Olivia Long. Water paid by Olivia Long. Internet paid by Olivia Long. Total household subsidy provided by Olivia Long over 24 months, $72,000. Stop it, Marissa screamed. She lunged for the binder, but Rowena pulled it back with surprising speed. This is private. You are humiliating us. You humiliated yourself when you asked for a mansion while standing in a house you do not own, I said. Trent stood up, his face red. Now wait a minute. Olivia, we put sweat equity into this place. We managed it. That counts for something. You can't just wave papers around. I am not just waving papers, I said. I am clarifying the asset. I looked at Trent directly. Rowena, read the document from the county clerk's office regarding the filing attempted 3 days ago. Rowena turned the page. Notice of rejected filing. Document type quitclaim deed. Reason for rejection. Suspected forgery and fraud. Status referred to the district attorney's office for review. Trent went pale. He sank back into his chair as if his strings had been cut. You tried to steal the house, I said to him. You tried to forge my signature and transfer the deed to your name for $1. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Trent stammered. It was just paperwork. We were going to pay you back. It is a felony, I said, and my lawyer has already flagged it. My father finally spoke. His voice was trembling. Olivia, please, not in front of everyone. We can talk about this later. We are family. We are not talking about it later, I said, because there is nothing left to talk about. I looked at Marissa. She was breathing hard, her hands clutching her stomach, eyes darting around the room looking for an ally. But the room was silent. The witnesses she had summoned were now witnesses to her fraud. You said I needed to start looking for a house this week, I said to her. You are right. You do need to look for a house, because you cannot stay here. You can't kick us out, Marissa cried. I am pregnant with triplets. You can't evict babies. I am not evicting babies, I said. I am selling a house. I picked up the final document from the top of the pile. It was the one I had signed that morning with the investor Sarah had brought by. The house is already under contract, I said. The color drained from my mother's face. What? I accepted an offer this morning, I said. Cash buyer, fast close, the house is sold. Mom, you sold our home, my father whispered. My house, I corrected. I sold my house. I looked at Trent, whose mouth was hanging open. Closing is scheduled for December 28th, I said. That gives you exactly 30 days. You need to be out, completely out, broom clean. If you are not, the new owners will have the sheriff remove you, and since it is a cash sale to a corporation, they will not care about your sob story. I picked up my tote bag. I felt light. I felt weightless. Enjoy the turkey, I said. I suspect it will taste a little dry now that you know you are eating it in a foreclosure. I turned to walk away, but I stopped. I looked back at the stunned room, at the recording phones, at the faces of the people who had judged me for years. Oh, and for the record, I said, looking at the church deacon, anyone who donated to Marissa's house fund thinking I refused to help you might want to ask for a refund, because that money didn't go to a house. I paid for the house. You paid for her handbags. I walked out of the dining room. Behind me, The silence broke, not with applause, but with the sound of a dozen conversations exploding at once, and the distinct, high-pitched wail of my sister realizing her stage had just collapsed. The explosion was not instantaneous. It rippled outward from the center of the table like a shockwave knocking over dominoes. For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence, the kind that exists in the eye of a storm. Then, the atmosphere shattered. My mother was the first to break. She did not scream. She dissolved. She slumped into her chair, covering her face with a napkin, and let out a wail that sounded less like grief and more like the terror of a woman realizing her retirement plan had just walked out the door. My father sat frozen, his mouth slightly ajar, staring at the empty space where his denial used to live. But Marissa did not cry. She went on the offensive. "You are punishing babies," she screamed, her face twisting into a mask of ugly, distorted rage. She slammed her hand onto the table, rattling the silverware. "You are sick, Olivia. You are evicting 3 innocent children because you are jealous. You are jealous that I have a life and you just have a bank account." I stood still, watching her performance with the detachment of an anthropologist observing a primitive ritual. "Nobody is punishing babies," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "Mostly because nobody has seen a baby. But we can discuss that later." "They are real," Marissa shrieked, looking around the room for support. "Tell her. Trent, tell her about the heartbeat. Tell her about the nursery we planned." Trent looked like a man waking up from a coma to find himself in a burning building. He was not looking at Marissa. He was looking at the binder Rowena still held open on the table. The sold contract was visible on top. "Let me see it," Trent said. His voice was rough, stripped of the jovial confidence he had worn an hour ago. "Don't you look at her papers," Marissa snapped at him, grabbing his arm. "She is lying. She forged them. She is trying to scare us." Trent shook her off. It was the first time I had ever seen him physically reject her. "I said let me see it. Marissa." Rowena slid the folder across the tablecloth. She did not shove it. She presented it. Trent picked it up. His eyes scanned the purchase agreement. He read the sale price. He read the closing date. He read the clause that stipulated vacant possession. "It is real," Trent whispered. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. "You actually sold it. You sold it to a cash buyer." "I did," I said. "And the wire transfer for the deposit hit my account this morning. It is done. Trent, the house is gone." "But the equity," Trent stammered, flipping through the pages. "We lived here for 2 years. The market went up. We deserve a cut. We maintained the property." "Turn to tab 4, Rowena said, her voice cool and crisp. Trent turned the page. "That is the ledger of maintenance costs," Rowena explained. "Roof repairs, HV, AC, servicing, lawn care, pest control. Every single invoice is attached. Every single payment came from Olivia's checking account. You didn't maintain the property. Trent, you merely occupied it." Trent stared at the numbers. The math was relentless. It did not care about his feelings. Marissa saw him wavering. She saw the realization dawning on his face that the free ride was not just over, but that it had never really belonged to him in the first place. She panicked. "Stop reading that," she yelled at him. "Don't embarrass me. Trent, you are supposed to be on my side. Why are you looking at her papers? Look at me. I am carrying your children." "Are you?" Trent asked. He didn't shout it. He said it with a quiet, horrifying doubt that sucked the air out of the room. Marissa recoiled, as if he had slapped her. "How dare you?" she hissed. "In front of everyone. How dare you question me?" "I am questioning where we are going to sleep in 30 days, Trent said, slamming the binder shut. "Because according to this, we are homeless." The guests were shifting uncomfortably. This was not the Thanksgiving drama they were used to. This was not a spat about burnt turkey. This was a forensic dismantling of a family's lifestyle. Suddenly, a voice piped up from the side of the room. It was one of the women from the Mommy and Me group. A woman named Carol, who wore a heavy gold cross around her neck. Carol said, raising her hand tentatively as if she were in class. If the house was. If Olivia was paying for everything, she trailed off, looking at Marissa. What is it, Carol? Marissa snapped. Well, Carol said, her face flushing pink. I donated $50 to your GoFundMe last week, the one for the Stork Fund. You said you needed it for the down payment because your sister backed out of her promise, but if she was paying the mortgage the whole time, the room went dead silent. Marissa's face turned a color I had never seen before, a mix of gray and purple. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. You solicited donations, I asked. I made sure my voice was loud enough for the back row. You told these people I broke a promise, and you asked them for cash. We needed a nest egg, Marissa cried, pivoting instantly to a new defense. Babies are expensive. We were saving for their future. It is not a crime to ask for help. It is fraud to ask for help based on a lie, I said. And Carol. You might want to check Marissa's Instagram stories from last Tuesday. That $50 looks a lot like the new gel manicure she posted. Carol gasped. Marissa looked like she wanted to kill me. Before she could launch another attack. A chime sounded simultaneously on several phones in the room. It was a synchronized digital alert. I checked my phone. It was the email from Naomi Vale. She had set it to go out at exactly 2 o'clock. That, I said, pointing to the phones held by my parents and Trent, is the formal notice to vacate. It has been sent to your emails and filed with the county. It is not a suggestion. It is a legal timeline. You have until December 28th at 5 in the afternoon to remove all personal property and vacate the premises. Keys must be left in the lockbox. I am taking you to court, Marissa shouted. She stood up so fast her chair tipped over backward. You can't do this. I have rights, squatters' rights, tenants' rights. I renovated this house. I painted the nursery. I put up the shiplap in the hallway. That adds value. I will sue you for the equity. Please do, I said. I would love to go to court. Rowena, show her the receipts for the renovation materials. Rowena pulled a single sheet of paper from the back of the binder. Home Depot receipt, dated March 12th, she read. 4 gallons of paint, drop cloths, brushes, paid with Visa ending in 4599. Rowena looked over her glasses at Marissa. That is Olivia's card. You didn't pay for the paint. Marissa, you just held the brush. And the shiplap, I added. I paid the contractor. I have the invoice. You have 0 equity. You have 0 financial footprint in this house. The only thing you have contributed is noise. My mother finally looked up from her napkin. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked older than she had 10 minutes ago. She looked at me not with anger, but with a profound, terrifying disappointment. Olivia, she croaked, your father's health. You know his heart isn't strong. How can you do this? How can you destroy Thanksgiving like this? We are family. Families fix things. They don't sell each other out. I didn't sell you out. Mom, I said. I just stopped buying you in. But the timing, she wept. Why today? Why when we were all so happy? Why when we were celebrating the triplets? You are cruel, Olivia. You have always been cold. But this is cruel. I felt a flash of heat in my chest. It was the old anger, the childhood anger, the anger of the girl who had to smile while her sister blew out her birthday candles. Cruel, I repeated. I stepped closer to the table. You want to talk about cruel, Mom? I watched you. I watched you 10 minutes ago. Marissa stood up and demanded a mansion. She demanded that I, the daughter you ignore unless you need a check, spend $500,000 to fund her fantasy. And you didn't say, that is too much, Marissa. You didn't say, Olivia has done enough. I leaned in, my hands resting on the white tablecloth. You clapped, I whispered. You cheered. You looked at me like I was an ATM that had finally spit out the right amount of cash. How could you clap? Mom, how could you sit there and applaud her for bleeding me dry? My mother flinched. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I didn't do this to Dad's heart," I said, straightening up. "You did. You let her build a life on a foundation of lies, and you helped her pour the concrete. Now it is cracking. Don't blame the person who pointed out the cracks. Blame the architects." I picked up my bag. I didn't want to look at them anymore. The satisfaction of the reveal was fading, replaced by a deep, exhausting sadness. I had won, but the prize was realizing that my family was exactly who I feared they were. "I am leaving," I said. "I suggest you start packing. The boxes are not included in the sale." I walked out of the dining room. I heard Trent asking Rowena a question about the security deposit. I heard Carol whispering to another guest. I heard Marissa sobbing, a loud theatrical sound that was meant to pull me back. I didn't turn around. I drove back to Charlotte in silence. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. I just drove, watching the miles put distance between me and the wreckage. I got to my new townhouse around 8 o'clock. It was quiet. It was empty. I ordered Thai food and sat on the floor of my living room, scrolling through my phone. I knew Marissa wouldn't stay quiet. She needed to control the narrative. She needed to be the victim. Sure enough. At 9:30, the notification popped up. Marissa had posted a reel on Instagram and TikTok. It was a montage of her crying soft, pretty tears with a filter that made her skin look flawless. The music was a sad acoustic cover of a pop song. The caption was a novel, "I am heartbroken." Today was supposed to be a celebration of life, of our 3 little miracles. Instead, it was an ambush. I learned today that family can be toxic. I learned that some people value money more than blood. My sister, who I have looked up to my whole life, decided to kick us out of our home on Thanksgiving. She is jealous of my happiness, jealous of my babies. We are on the street in 30 days. Please pray for us. The stress is so bad for the triplets. My doctor says I need bed rest immediately. I watched the video, in the middle of the montage. There was a quick clip of a piece of paper. It was clearly meant to be proof of her medical fragility. It was a discharge paper from a hospital, or at least it looked like one. I paused the video. I zoomed in. The paper was titled, "Emergency Department Discharge Instructions." It had the logo of the local Greenville hospital. It listed stress reaction as the diagnosis. But then I saw the date, in her haste to post, in her desperation to prove she was the victim of a medical emergency caused by my cruelty. Marissa had not checked the fine print. The date on the discharge paper was November 28, 2024, 2 years ago. She had recycled an old ER visit form from when she had a panic attack after Trent broke up with her briefly. She was passing it off as today's trauma. But that wasn't the worst part. At the bottom of the paper, in the patient instructions section, there was a handwritten note from the doctor. Patient advised to refrain from alcohol and caffeine for 48 hours, 2 years ago. She wasn't pregnant. But right next to the paper in the video, sitting on the bedside table where she was filming, was a half-empty bottle of wine. She had posted a current video of her trauma, claiming to be pregnant with triplets, while showing a 2-year-old medical form and an open bottle of wine in the frame. I screenshotted it. I screen-recorded the entire video. I didn't comment. I didn't share it. I just saved it to the folder titled, "The End." She had just handed me the shovel. All I had to do was wait for her to finish digging the grave. 3 days after the Thanksgiving detonation, the war came to my doorstep. I had expected angry texts, or perhaps a vandalism attempt on my car, but Marissa and my mother chose a more direct approach. It was 7 in the morning on a Saturday. I was in my new townhouse in Charlotte, sitting on the floor of the living room with a cup of black coffee, enjoying the silence of a space that I paid for and controlled. Then the doorbell rang. It was not a polite ring. It was a sustained, aggressive assault on the button. I checked the security feed on my phone. There they were, distorted by the fisheye lens of the camera but unmistakable. My mother was wearing a raincoat, clutching her purse like a shield. Marissa was pacing behind her, looking disheveled and frantic, wearing oversized sunglasses despite the gray sky. I did not move to open the door. I had anticipated this. My new address was not a secret, it was on the lease documents I had foolishly left visible on the table during the Thanksgiving reveal, but my sanctuary was non-negotiable. I pressed the intercom button on my phone. "I am not opening the door," I said. My voice was transmitted through the small speaker on the porch. Tinny but clear. My mother jumped. She looked at the camera, confused by the technology. Olivia, open up. We drove 2 hours. We need to talk." "We can talk through the app," I said. "I am not inviting you inside. If you have something to say it to the camera." Marissa shoved Mom aside and put her face close to the lens. "You need to pay us out," she shouted. "We talked to a lawyer. You owe us a buyout. We have rights. You can't just sell the house and keep all the profit when we live there." "I can," I said calmly. "Because I own it, and you are not tenants. You are guests who have overstayed." "I am not a guest," Marissa screamed. "I am your sister. I am pregnant with triplets. You are selfish. Olivia, you are a selfish, cold-hearted witch. We have nowhere to go. Do you hear me? Nowhere. You have 27 days, I said. That is plenty of time to find an apartment. I suggest you start looking instead of driving to Charlotte to yell at a doorbell. We want $50,000, Marissa demanded. Cash, for moving expenses, and for the stress you caused. If you give us $50,000, we will leave quietly. If not, I am going to the press. I will tell everyone you kicked a pregnant woman onto the street. Go to the press, I said. I will give them the foreclosure notice and the forged deed. I think the local news would love a story about real estate fraud. Marissa kicked the door. A sharp, hollow thud echoed through the hallway. I hate you, she shrieked. I hope you die alone in this house. Go home, Mom, I said, my voice softening just a fraction, though I regretted it instantly. Take her home before the neighbors call the police. I watched on the screen as my mother grabbed Marissa's arm and dragged her away. Marissa was still screaming obscenities as they got into my mother's car. I turned off the feed. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of holding a boundary that used to be made of paper. I called Naomi Vale immediately. They are escalating, I told her. They just showed up at my house demanding $50,000. Predictable, Naomi said. Her voice was the audio equivalent of ice water. They are realizing they have no leverage, so they are trying to create some through chaos. We need to cut off the oxygen. How? We offer them a crumb, Naomi said. It is a standard tactical move in landlord-tenant disputes. We call it cash for keys. We offer them a small, non-negotiable relocation stipend, say $3,000, but to get the check, they have to sign a voluntary vacate agreement. I don't want to give them a cent, I said. I have given them $70,000 over 2 years. Listen to me, Naomi said. The goal is not justice. The goal is vacancy. If they dig in, if they force the sheriff to come, they could damage the property out of spite. They could pour concrete down the drains. They could strip the copper wire. $3,000 is insurance. And here's the trap. The agreement will include a clause releasing you from all future claims. It will explicitly state that they have no ownership interest, no equity claim, and that they acknowledge the debt they owe you is forgiven only upon vacating. It legally neuters any lawsuit they might try to file later. I thought about it. It tasted bitter, like swallowing poison to cure a headache, but it was smart. Do it, I said. Draft it. Naomi sent the document to Marissa's email an hour later. We gave them a deadline signed by 5 o'clock that evening. Or the offer expired, and we proceeded with a sheriff-enforced eviction. Marissa signed it in 14 minutes. She didn't read it. I knew she didn't read it. She saw the number $3,000, and she saw a quick influx of cash that she could use to buy a new purse or put a deposit on a rental. She didn't realize that by signing that document, she had formally admitted, under penalty of perjury, that she had no ownership rights to the house. She had signed a confession to get a check. Naomi called me, sounding almost amused. She signed, "The document is executed. If she tries to sue you for equity now, a judge will throw it out before he even sits down. She just sold her entire legal argument for $3,000. The legal front was securing, but the psychological front was still active. That afternoon, I received a text message from Trent. It was the first time he had contacted me directly since the dinner. Liv, I need clarity. Marissa is saying you forged those papers at dinner. She says you are gaslighting us. I don't know what to believe, but I can't go to jail. Please, if there is real trouble, tell me. I looked at the phone. Trent was a fool. But he was a useful fool. He was the one who would actually have to move the boxes. If I could break his allegiance to Marissa's fantasy, the house would be empty faster. I didn't reply with text. I replied with data. I attached 3 files. First, the title search report from the county, showing the clean chain of ownership to me and the rejected filing of the quitclaim deed. Second, a high-resolution PDF of the forged quitclaim deed with the mismatched signature, highlighting the notary stamp that belonged to a disbarred fraudster. Third, the folder of screenshots from the Stork Fund fundraiser, cross-referenced with Marissa's credit card statement, showing purchases at Sephora and a luxury spa on the exact dates the donations came in. I added a single line of text. The forgery is a felony. Trent, the fundraising is wire fraud. Marissa signed a document today admitting she owns nothing. If you stay on her ship, you go down with it. Check the signature on the deed. It isn't mine. Who else has access to my mail? I saw the read receipt appear instantly. Then, silence. I knew what was happening. Trent was sitting somewhere, looking at the jagged scrawl on the deed, realizing it matched the handwriting on the birthday cards Marissa signed for him. He was realizing that he wasn't the husband of a victim. He was the husband of a liability. The walls were crumbling, and debris was starting to fall from unexpected places. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. It was a direct message on Nextdoor. The neighborhood app. I had kept my account active to monitor the area. The message was from Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman who lived 2 houses down from the Oakwood property. Hi, Olivia. The message read, I saw the moving truck quote you posted about a while back. I assume this means the bed and breakfast is closing down. I frowned. Bed and breakfast, I typed back. Mrs. Gable, I don't know what you mean. It was just my family living there. The reply came fast. Oh, I just assumed it was a business. For the last year, Marissa has had different young people staying in the upstairs guest room, students, I think, or traveling nurses. She told me she was doing short-term rentals to help pay the mortgage since the house was so big. There was a nice young man with a suitcase leaving just this morning. My jaw tightened. Marissa had been telling the world, that the house was cramped. She had claimed she needed a bigger house because she had no space. Meanwhile, she had an empty bedroom that she was renting out on the side. She was collecting rent from strangers. She was pocketing the cash. And she was still making me pay the mortgage, the electric bill, and the water bill that those strangers were using. She had turned my house into a hotel, kept the profits, and billed me for the overhead. I screenshotted the conversation. I added it to the file. It was just another layer of the betrayal, another confirmation that to Marissa, I was not a person. I was a resource to be mined until the vein ran dry. At 8 o'clock, my father called. I almost didn't answer. I didn't think I could handle the guilt trip, but I picked up. Hello, Dad? I said. The line was quiet for a long time. I could hear his breathing. It sounded heavy, labored. Is it true? He asked. His voice was small. It lacked the bluster he usually put on when he was defending Marissa. Did she try to sign the house over the deed? Yes, I said. Naomi caught it. It was a clumsy forgery. Dad, but it was a crime. I didn't know, he whispered. I swear to you, Olivia, I knew she was stretching things with the money, but I didn't know she would try to steal it. You knew enough, I said gently. You knew I was paying for everything. You knew she was lying to her friends about buying it. You stood there and nodded while she humiliated me at dinner. I just wanted peace, he said. I just wanted everyone to get along. She is your sister. She has always been difficult. I thought if we just kept her happy, it would be okay. You sacrificed me to keep her happy, I said. The words came out with a clarity that surprised me. You used my money, my credit, and my sanity as the price of admission for her mood swings. You let her turn me into a bill. Dad, I wasn't your daughter. I was just the utility payment that kept the lights on in Marissa's world. He started to cry. It was a soft, broken sound. I am sorry, Livy. I am so sorry. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't pay the mortgage, and sorry doesn't fix the fraud. Your mother wants you to stop the sale, he said, shifting gears, trying one last time to fix it. She says if you stop the sale, we can work out a payment plan. We can pay you rent. No, I said. I can't do business with people who steal from me. The sale proceeds. The closing is set. Where will we go? He asked. There are apartments, I said. 2-bedroom apartments in Greenville are affordable. You have your pension. You have Social Security. You can afford a simple life. Dad, you just can't afford Marissa's life. She won't survive, he said. She will have to, I said. Or she won't. But I am not carrying her anymore. I took a breath. I will offer you this, Dad, because you are my father and I know your back is bad. Once you are moved out, if you need rides to your doctor's appointments, I will drive you. I will come down from Charlotte and drive you myself. I will help you with your medical forms, but I will not give you 1 cent of cash, and I will not support Marissa. If she is in the car, I will not unlock the doors. Okay, he whispered. Okay, Livy, thank you. He hung up. It was the most honest conversation we had had in 20 years. 10 minutes later, my mother called. I sent her to voicemail. She left a 3-minute message, alternating between begging me to pause the sale and screaming that I was destroying the family. She was bargaining with a reality that had already been finalized. I sat in the silence of my townhouse. The siege was breaking. They were scrambling. The alliance between Trent and Marissa was fracturing. My father had defected to the side of the truth. My mother was the last holdout, clinging to the wreckage. Then, my phone rang one last time. It was Naomi. I have an update on the closing, she said. The buyers want to do the final walkthrough on the 28th, right after the vacancy deadline. They are serious. They want to measure for their own renovations. That is fine, I said. They will be out. There is one more thing, Naomi said. Marissa's lawyer, some strip mall guy she probably hired with the relocation money, sent a letter. They are claiming that the eviction is illegal because of her high-risk pregnancy. They are claiming that moving her would endanger the lives of the triplets. They are asking for a 90-day extension. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. She is doubling down. She is, Naomi said, which is why we are going to end this. I scheduled a meeting with her lawyer for Tuesday. I told them we would consider the extension if they provide certified medical proof of the pregnancy, not a note, not a blurry photo. We want a sworn affidavit from her OBGYN stating she is carrying triplets and that moving is a medical risk. She can't provide that, I said. I know, Naomi said, and when she fails to provide it, we will move for an emergency hearing. I want it on the record. Olivia, I want a judge to ask her where the babies are. Bring the evidence you found. Bring the stolen ultrasound photo. Bring the blog post. Naomi paused, and I could hear the sharp click of her pen capping. Bring the triplets' evidence, she said. We are going to ask her to produce medical proof, or get out of the house. I looked at the folder on my counter. The photo of the ultrasound from Ohio was sitting on top. I will be there, I said. The last grab had been made. Marissa had reached for a shield, but she had picked up a sword by the blade, and on Tuesday, she was going to have to explain why she was bleeding. The final week of December arrived with a weather front that matched the mood inside the house on Oakwood Drive. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with unshed rain, and the air was cold enough to crack bone. I pulled my car up to the curb. parking behind a large moving truck that was idling in the driveway. The deadline was 5 o'clock that afternoon. The closing was scheduled for the next morning. I was not alone. I had brought Naomi Vale with me. She was not there to move boxes. She was there to ensure that the transition of power was absolute. We walked up the driveway, our boots crunching on the dead leaves that Trent had promised to rake 3 months ago and never touched. Inside, the house was a landscape of defeat. Cardboard boxes were stacked haphazardly in the hallway. The walls, stripped of Marissa's boho chic art and oversized mirrors, looked bare and scarred. The house looked exactly like what it was, a structure that had been used, not loved. My family was in the living room. My mother was wrapping figurines in newspaper, her movements slow and lethargic. My father was sitting on a cooler, staring at the floor. Marissa was standing near the fireplace, not packing, but frantically typing on her phone. Trent was taping a box shut with a violence that suggested he was imagining the tape was someone's neck. When we walked in, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You are early," Marissa snapped, not looking up from her screen. "We still have 4 hours." "We are right on time," Naomi said. She placed her briefcase on the kitchen island, the sound sharp and authoritative. "We are here to do the final walkthrough and collect the keys, and we need to address the outstanding matter of the quit-claim deed." Marissa froze. She finally looked up, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. "I told you. That was a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help with the paperwork." "It was a felony," Naomi said pleasantly. "We submitted the document to the fraud division of the county clerk's office this morning. They were very interested in the notary stamp. It belongs to a man who has been dead for 2 years. The color drained from Marissa's face. My mother stopped wrapping her figurines. "Dead?" my father whispered. "It seems you purchased a fake stamp online," Naomi continued, looking directly at Marissa. "We are willing to let the criminal investigation slide if, and only if, the property is vacated in full by 5 o'clock today and you sign the document acknowledging that you have no claims against Olivia Long." Marissa looked at Trent, expecting him to jump to her defense, but Trent was not looking at her. He was looking at me. He was holding his phone, and I recognized the interface. He was looking at the email I had sent him, the one with the blog post from Ohio. "Sign it," Trent said. His voice was flat. "Trent?" Marissa gasped. "Whose side are you on? She is kicking us out. She is kicking out your children." Trent dropped the tape gun. It clattered loudly on the hardwood floor. He walked over to Marissa. He did not look angry. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man who had been running a marathon only to realize he was on a treadmill. "Show me the picture," Trent said. "What?" Marissa stepped back. "The ultrasound," Trent said. "The one you posted on Facebook. The one you showed my mother. Show it to me on your phone, right now." I can't," Marissa stammered. "My battery is dead, and why does it matter? You have seen it." "I saw a picture," Trent said. "But Olivia sent me something interesting. She sent me a blog post from a woman named Sarah in Ohio, from 5 years ago, and Sarah has the exact same triplets as you, down to the pixel." The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. "That is crazy," Marissa laughed, a high, brittle sound that cracked in the middle. "She must have stolen it from me. Or maybe it just looks similar. Ultrasounds all look the same." "They don't," Trent said. "And the date stamp on Sarah's photo is from 2021. Were you pregnant with our triplets 5 years ago?" "Marissa." "Before we even met?" Marissa's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Mom. She looked at Dad. She looked for an exit, but there was only the hallway lined with the boxes of the life she couldn't afford. I just used a placeholder," she cried, the tears starting instantly. "I didn't want to jinx the real babies. I was scared. I just wanted a picture to make it feel real for everyone. The babies are real. Trent, I just used a stock photo for the announcement." "A placeholder," Trent repeated. "Yes," Marissa sobbed. "You know how high risk this is. I was protecting them." Trent looked at Naomi. Do you have the affidavit? Naomi nodded. She pulled a single sheet of paper from her briefcase. This is a sworn medical affidavit. It authorizes Marissa's OB/GYN to release confirmation of pregnancy to the court. Just a yes or no, no details. Just confirmation that a multiple pregnancy exists. Naomi held the pen out to Marissa. If the babies are real, sign this. We will delay the eviction. We will get you a hotel. Olivia will pay for it. If the doctor confirms you are carrying triplets, we stop everything right now. Marissa stared at the paper. Her hand shook. She reached for it, then stopped. She looked at Trent, whose eyes were pleading with her to prove him wrong. He wanted to be wrong. He wanted to be a father more than he wanted to be right. Marissa dropped her hand. She couldn't sign it, because signing it would mean jail time for perjury. Marissa's voice was a whisper. I just wanted us to be happy. I just wanted the house. We needed the house to be a family. So you are not pregnant, Trent said. It was not a question. It was a sentence. You are not pregnant with triplets. You are not pregnant at all. Marissa didn't answer. She just put her face in her hands and began to weep ugly, heaving sobs that echoed off the bare walls. My mother made a sound like she had been punched in the stomach. She slumped against the kitchen counter. No, she whispered. No, Marissa, you told me. We bought the onesies. We told the church. You clapped, I said softly to my mother. Remember, you clapped for the lie. Mom looked at me, and her face broke. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the crushing weight of realization. She realized she hadn't just been tricked. She had been a willing accomplice because the lie was more convenient than my truth. She had wanted the triplets to be real, because it gave her status. She had wanted me to be the villain because it was easier than admitting her golden child was rotten. My father sat on the cooler, rubbing his temples. He didn't look surprised. That was the worst part. He looked resigned. I knew, Dad said. His voice was rough. I knew she was stretching it. She never went to the appointments. She always had an excuse. And you let her do it, I said. You let her try to take my house. I wanted peace, Dad said, looking up at me with watery eyes. I just wanted peace in the house. Olivia. I thought if we gave her what she wanted, she would finally settle down. You chose peace over fairness, I said. And look where it got you. You don't have peace, and you don't have a house. Trent turned away from Marissa. He walked over to the counter where his keys were. He picked them up. Trent, Marissa wailed. Where are you going? We have to load the truck. I am not loading the truck, Trent said. I am going to my brother's place. You can keep the stuff. I don't want any of it. You can't leave me, Marissa screamed, grabbing his arm. We are married. You promised. Trent pulled his arm away. He looked at her with a quiet, profound disgust that was far more damaging than hatred. I married a person, Marissa. I didn't marry a performance. He walked out the front door. He didn't look back. The sound of his truck engine starting was the final period at the end of her sentence. Marissa collapsed onto the floor, screaming his name, but the audience had left the building. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of efficiency. The movers, paid for by the relocation stipend I had forced them to accept, loaded the truck. My parents drove away in their sedan, looking small and defeated. Marissa was the last to leave. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, staring at the house, before finally reversing out of the driveway. When the last car was gone, I walked through the empty rooms. The house was silent. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor where the dining table used to be. I felt the ghosts of the arguments, the guilt trips, and the manipulation fading away. I locked the front door. I placed the keys in the lockbox for the new owners. The sale closed the next morning at 10 o'clock. The wire transfer hit my account an hour later. It was a significant sum, enough to pay off my townhouse in Charlotte and pad my retirement. But the money wasn't the victory. The victory was the silence. In the weeks that followed, the dust settled. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom rental unit near the highway. It was modest, clean, and exactly what they could afford on their own. Marissa moved into a studio apartment 3 towns over, when the truth about the triplets came out, and it did. Because gossip in a small town travels faster than light, her support circle evaporated. The women who had thrown her a shower demanded their gifts back. The church group went silent. She was left alone with her lies and a very small closet. I kept my promise to my father. Every Tuesday, I drove down from Charlotte to take him to his physical therapy. I picked him up at the curb. I drove him to the clinic. I sat in the waiting room. I drove him home. We talked about the weather. We talked about sports. We never talked about Marissa, and I never handed him cash. If he needed a prescription, I paid the pharmacy directly. If he needed groceries, I ordered them online to be delivered. I closed the open tap. I became a daughter, not a bank. My life in Charlotte became quiet. At first, the silence felt heavy, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for the crisis call, the demand, the guilt. But the phone didn't ring. The emails I accepted were brief and polite. One evening, I sat on my patio, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I had a glass of wine that I had bought for myself. I had a mortgage that was solely in my name. I had a future that belonged to no one but me. I realized then that the silence wasn't loneliness. It was the sound of a life that had finally been structurally reinforced. I had evicted the tenants who were destroying the foundation. I had renovated my boundaries. I took a sip of wine and smiled. It tasted like freedom. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear from you. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel Helena Revenge Stories. Like this video, and if you really enjoyed it, hit that hype button to help this story reach more people.